Yeah, oh, it's like I'm deriving the square size radius.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's kind of what I do in my free time these days.
That's awesome. I also like the airplane model that you have over there, original mono propeller.
Yeah, thanks.
Did you code this yourself, or was it part
Yeah,
of like really?
yeah.
Eh, Oh, I see.
Okay, so you don't have to switch on your videos like a voice only thing, but we do that usually so like there's a better interactivity, you could say.
If
So
there's a
it's up
better
to you.
what?
Interactivity, interaction, you could say.
Ah, yes, yes, yes. You want me to
Yeah.
turn off my voice thing?
No, no, it's up to you if you want to switch on a video or not. That's what I'm saying.
Oh, okay. Let me see if I can make this a little bit more manageable. There we go. Much better. Okay. So, do you want to start?
Yeah, sure. So I started the recording already, just to like be on the safer side. Okay, so
Okay.
I'm gonna
Okay.
start. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Think and Laugh Hour, the show where we bring you the brightest minds and the fascinating stories from the world of various sciences. I'm your host Kush, and today's episode is nothing short of a tech enthusiast's dream. We have the privilege of hosting a true polymath, a visionary whose expertise spans across various landscapes of technology, from securing critical infrastructure to delving into the intricacies of quantum computing. Our guest has left an indelible mark in various domains. His journey is a testament to the power of curiosity and endless possibility that technology offers. He is a lifelong learner who has not only touched ICL cybersecurity and game design, but also ventured into the realm of medical AI, electrical engineering, and much more. His massive credentials include collaborations with the industry giants like Intel and Microsoft. So buckle up as we embark on an exploration into the multifaceted career of a man who, if it operates on electricity, owns it. Please join me in welcoming the one and only James Haliday.
Hello. Thank you for that amazing warm introduction. As it was said before, my name is James Haliday, or I can just go by James. My call sign for technology is Arctic or Alert,
Mhm.
and I have been working in STEM fields since I was around 10 years old.
Oh,
So I've been doing this stuff for a long time. I've practiced in about 18 different coding languages. I have worked with some amazing companies in security and when it comes to development or engineering or security or code implementation or
mhm.
even just things like market analyst, which still falls under STEM, as there's a lot of interesting AI and math that you can apply into that. So
Oh,
lots of fun fields there.
okay. Personally, I didn't even know there were 18 languages. So that's cool. So, can you share about your journey into the world of technology and how you got into various fields and became a polymath in the first place?
So when it came to like my introduction to technology, what really happened is when I was younger, I like kind of looked at the world around me, and even at a young age, I said like 10 years old, 7 years old, I thought to myself, like, what can I do to change this? Like, what is it in my power that I can do to make something work better? Like at 7, 10 years old, did not have many resources when it came
Mm,
to, like if I could build robotics to help people or, like the hardware that I was running on to code AIs. So that I myself, like, okay, what can I do? So I
mm,
started out with writing stuff in like HTML and JavaScript. So I started off by like writing programs that were meant to, help people. I ended up writing some stuff that was meant to help people who had like speech disabilities try to learn how to speak, easier and stuff, repetition that was adaptive and programs like that. Like I remember when I was about either 9 or 10 years old, that's one of the first things I ever did. Was my brother who had a speech disability. He was having trouble trying to pronounce certain words, and I thought to myself, you know what, I can code, relatively well for a 10-year-old. And I think I can create something, a script, an app that he could use to try to, learn these words. And it really did help. And that was really like my gateway into this whole rabbit hole that I fell down from going from STEM field to STEM field to STEM field that I'm never going to stop.
Right, that's really inspiring. Like, not only like using your creative skills and your technological skills, but also helping the world using them. I personally have never tried those things. I've been doing stuff that I like to do personally.
Well, the thing is that anybody who applies what they want to do, there's always a field for everything. So, there's always a way to change the world no matter what your interests are.
That's a good quote. So, let's talk about your diverse expertise and take a deep dive. So,
Sure.
how did you venture into ICS cybersecurity, and what challenges did you face in the field?
So I had been doing ICS cybersecurity. I've been doing it for the past 3 years, so I've gotten relatively specialized in it. And when I first started, I had already had a lot of credentials in security, but I'd mainly focused in network security and web security, which are two major fields of security. And I've
Right.
been working in them, and I've been doing a lot of private stuff, random antiviruses that work off of not just signature-based stuff, for protecting home PCs to like anti-cheat solutions for schools, things like
Mm.
that. And, more private security things like AI-powered incident detection systems and IPSs, internet prevention systems for networks that were software-based. Lots of fun
Right.
stuff. Yeah, and then the thing is that eventually I realized that as much fun as it is to like continue to work with websites,
Mm-hmm.
is that you can make a whole lot of change in this world when it comes to ICS, because critical infrastructure like our dams, our power grid, like nuclear reactors, all those things are our most like critical asset. I believe that CISA, which is the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency for the United States, said that some odd 97% of like ICS systems that are critical assets are actually just open on there and are
Right.
vulnerable when open. So that means, like, what is it going to be, the power station down the street that has programmable logic controllers, which say something like, if the temperature is over this, allow current to alternate through here or attempt a different
Hmm.
grounding circuit, in order to stop for burnouts,
Yeah.
things like that are very critical systems for not just ensuring, like no loss of property and no added damage, but like human life in some places. That's what
Right.
I thought was really, useful to protect. And I worked really hard at the beginning of it because I had found all these wonderful mentors in the field. I had reached out to, like I said, like CISA was really great for education. They
Mm.
have a whole thing on ICS security, like from the physical aspects of it to, some of like the networking aspects of it and how to run tests and how to not accidentally ruin things is a huge part of the
Right.
course, is because there's stories in there of people. Like, one of the things that we found that's one of the biggest issues in ICS security is you can't do standardized scans, because
Hmm.
a standardized scan of a network, what it works with most of the time is by sending packets of information throughout the network and seeing what's returned, how long it takes, and what other data is returned in order to find out different IP addresses on the network and things like that and see how data moves through it. But
Okay.
with ICS systems, a lot of them are legacy systems, and you end up with it clogging the network and causing things to shut down. So you could end up accidentally turning off and shutting down your entire network or a certain part of that network just by scanning it for vulnerabilities, which is a huge problem.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I will say one of the problems with learning it that I did find is that there is a lack of community for it. So if you're looking for, a group of youth who are really interested in ICS security, you will
Hmm.
most likely not find any centralized group, as I have looked. And I will say that like we are starting to get more communities towards this idea and towards security. And I'm really happy about some of the new programs that are being ran all over the world for introducing people to security in general and into ICS security. But as of now, like community engagement for that field isn't there, although the learning resources are.
Right. Because like me personally also, I don't know a lot of people who are into the field of cybersecurity.
Yeah,
So
cybersecurity is a growing field. It's one of the fastest growing fields. In fact, it might actually be the fastest growing field around at the current moment. And it is going to become one of the greatest necessities that we have because we are now in a time and day, a time and age to where all of our most critical assets are being ran on the
mm-hmm.
internet. Like I said,
Yeah.
like a nuclear power plants, even though they shouldn't be, ran and controlled over the internet, some of them are. A lot of times what we'll
Yeah.
see is a lot of times what we'll see though is mainly solar and wind farms. Those almost like I'd reckon that about 2 out of 3 that we find are completely open, or using like the default passwords, and you could power them down if you wanted to. So it's
Right.
really it's really scary stuff. And then just insecurity in general is that, we think about it and we're like, well, somebody might take down a website or they might steal my data. You know, what we're looking at nowadays is not just like that. We're seeing actual like major causes of harm. We're seeing more violent extremism that's going on the internet. We're seeing a lot more data breaches,
Mm-hmm.
and we're seeing them in sectors that we thought were safe. We're seeing them a lot more in the medical sector. We're seeing them a lot more in like the physical sector of things. A lot of people thought that a dam that it looks like it is, hard coded, that's guarded, is in fact
Mm-hmm.
secure and will not just open, that there would be, safe routes for it and ways to redirect it or manually override. But a lot of times it's not the case. And that's a really large issue right now.
Right. So like the medical thing, it could really be an issue. Like if you want to assassinate someone, like not like you specifically, but like someone wants to assassinate, let's say, an injured president or maybe, then that might be a huge problem, right? So,
Oh, absolutely.
for like some important people, like presidents and government officials, maybe, or maybe CEOs, do you think there are like decentralized hospitals or maybe medical equipment, or do they use the general stuff only? Like,
They
are there
do.
any? Okay.
There are specialized systems for like high ranking people. Of course, you would always want to have that separate. The issue
Yeah.
that we're seeing more is in like the public sector. Like, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but did you hear about the 23andMe data breach? Did you hear about that?
No, not really.
There was a data breach that happened relatively recently where some 20 million different people were affected by it, and it was 20 million people's data were stolen, and it was mainly targeting Jewish populations.
Yeah.
And that happened relatively recently with a lot of medical record and full names, phone numbers, sometimes addresses, personal identifiable information, which is not something that people want. And it was supposedly going to be used in act of terrorism, which is, equally not good. But we do have a lot more safeguards when it comes to critical assets like that.
Mhm.
But you're talking, about probably, maybe a couple hundred people that have access to a decentralized system or military organizations. And even in certain places, military organizations are failing almost universally.
Okay. So, let's talk about quantum computing. Like, this is one of my favorite topics. So, how did you get into this field, and what have you learned from it?
So I got into this field a while back when I went down a bit of a rabbit hole of studying quantum physics and quantum mechanics. And
Mhm.
I was sitting there and I was wondering to myself, not everybody is going to have, an amazing quantum computer, at least within the next 10 years, most likely.
Yeah.
And I began to thinking, of my knowledge of tensors and mathematical operations. And I was debating, what could I possibly do to make this, more of a reality. So I started working and studying and theorizing and writing out ideologies of how I could possibly get into this field and how I could make it to where anybody could have access to quantum computational resources. And
Right.
the way, yeah, so the way that I did it is, I went online and I searched up as much just hard math and theory as I possibly could. Tons of different YouTube courses, tons of different courses that are ran by, Harvard. Harvard has a lot of like free online courses that you can do or that you can audit. And, YouTube is always a great place as long as you're getting it from good, reputable people and just private online forums as well. There are a lot of really good forums, like Math Stack Exchange is a
Mhm.
really good one for that. And I started writing up all these different bits of code and pseudocode. And so I just got more and more into the field as I built up this project because it was really my entry project into the field. And eventually I actually got it working. So it uses tensor operations to simulate a full range of quantum computational circuitry and allows people to build their own computational circuitry because with tensors and mathematics, you can move in more probabilistic states than binary 0 or 1. So it
Yeah.
still functions in the same way, except it's definitely slower because you're working with classical computations. So it's like running a virtual operating system on your own computer. That
Mhm.
virtual operating system is not going to be faster than your computer in any
Yeah.
way, shape, or form
That-
because it's limited by that. But
Yeah.
in comparison, it allows for people to mess around with those sort of fields, those sort of ideas, to build together their own circuits. And that was my entryway for getting into it, and that's mainly how I learned it.
So have you like worked on quantum computer, like not virtual one, but like an actual one?
I have not been able to. I have been talking to a lot of people that have had access to them in the past when it came to building like these architectures. But sadly, I could never make the trip to go visit Google's or IBM's. Although
Right.
that would be like the absolute holy land when it comes to
Yeah.
quantum
Yeah.
computations. That's the mecca right there.
I think it's a
But
dream for all of us at this point. Like quantum is like everyone's dreamland, like you said.
oh, absolutely. It's like the dream university tour, or something like that. Just
Yeah.
go over to IBM's headquarters or go over to Google HQ and take a look at their quantum computer. Just stare at it for just couple of minutes and just absolute awe. You know,
Yeah.
but yeah, make sure not to step too hard though, or else you might send it off by 1e to the power of 26. But other than that, your calculation's gonna say
Yeah.
their fast Fourier transform circuitry is gonna end up not being so fast and not so accurate.
Yeah. And it's interesting how humans have like evolved over like 7,000 years, and we have like come from playing with SIG and stones to quantum computers and AIs. It's fascinating to think about it in that perspective.
I mean, we function in relative time. We function in time that's relative to the human experience to aging. And I think that like given relative time of how fast humans are going, I think it is truly remarkable how, in only so many years we went from, creating phones that were mobile that weren't,
Yeah.
rotary phones or plugged into a house, to getting it to where we have quantum computers and that are functional, like not theoretical, but functional quantum computers that are, as of this very moment, running calculations, and we have this form of science to this level. Like, imagine where we will be if this kind of level progresses in 200 years. That is
Hmm.
what really excites me, is that if this frontier keeps on getting pushed, imagine what quantum computers will be capable of doing. Because I know right now there's been a lot of hype to what they're possible of, and there's been a little bit of downfall when it comes to that hype due to some of the limitations that it comes with accuracy.
Hmm.
But we will get very close to achieving, very high accuracy very soon. And from that point on, scientific endeavors will be greatly expedited.
Yeah. This like when I heard about how fast quantum calculate and stuff, the first thing that came to my mind calculating the exact value of, because happened before and it would be useful if it did happen. Because like the accuracy we need and the frequency in terms of which we use like huge.
Oh, absolutely. And one of the things that we're a group of people that I'm with, they're really researching a lot of right now is like the idea that you could run some form. And this is like, kind of a crazy idea here. And it's highly theoretical, experimental, whatever you might say it. The idea that you can run some sort of an artificial general intelligence program on a quantum computer, uh, given the fact that the human mind equally works in probabilistic states. Because in the base of the human mind is a quantum computer. We don't function in binary in the way that it was once believed. We function in, sets of impulses that are set to be differentiating values. We can have multiple values at the same time. Someone can have the same thought of yes and no at the same time,
Yeah.
and what we're realizing now more than ever is that if you're looking for something simulational, like
Uh-huh.
neuromorphological, which is to copy neuro activities, you really do need a quantum computer or some sort of very advanced simulation to simulate a quantum computer to
Hmm.
simulate the human mind. So running an artificial general intelligence program on a quantum computer might actually be somewhat feasible, given the current math. But we may, be accidentally adding a one and carrying a two, and might, might have it somewhat off to a much grander scheme, of not
Hmm.
following any single law of mathematics. But I believe that we are getting close to potentially running the first ever experiment that we have an awesome code name for and should come out sometime in either the coming spring or July. So very large time gap there, because if this does function, it will be talk of the town. But need to make sure it works and that we're not creating Ultron.
Yeah. I never thought
It's
about
much
it
more
that way.
tricky.
The human mind as a quantum computer. That's a good way to get it.
Well, we don't think in binary, although we do run off of electrical impulses, in a certain way. It's not a binary impulse. Pulses fade over time when going from, neuron to neuron, dendrite to dendrite.
Hmm.
Like we have it to where certain impulses are chained to certain actions, certain separate locations. Places are tethered. If you think about like the human mind and you relate it to quantum operations, it really quickly begins to, make sense that the human mind functions in the same basic quantum way, where you have
Right.
tethering of multiple ideas, you have it to where it's differential and you can have separate values, you can have two things at the same time, which it
Hmm.
fundamentally explains every form of quantum, mechanics of behavior that we see, you know. It works in
Yeah.
probabilistic states. Like that's why we're very excited about this because it might be, one of the things to solving that neuromorphological issue that we keep on finding, but time will tell.
Yep. Okay, so moving on, game design is another area we have conquered. So, what challenges and rewards come with creating immersive gaming experiences?
Well, I will tell you this. One of the first challenges that I ever encountered when it came to game design is knowing where to start.
Mhm.
My art style was absolutely terrible. My code was actually pretty decent. So I ended up starting off with like a lot of games that had amazing functionality
Mhm.
and like absolutely no art. You would have it to where you're playing a VR game and your hands are cubes, but they can like allow you to teleport through walls, or something like that, but like at a much higher full level, like non-Euclidean stuff. So I really love
Right.
non-Euclidean geometries.
So, I'm
And
trying to
the
learn
thing is,
about those.
oh, absolutely. Hyperbolic space is a whole trip on its own, and it's even more fun to view in VR because it'll make you very nauseous until you get used to it after like the fifth time. And
Right.
developing in it is an absolute nightmare. That's one of the other challenges with that is it's an absolute nightmare to try to code in a hyperbolic space. Um,
Right.
but nonetheless, and the math is just terrible. And non-Euclidean math makes me feel like I'm, accidentally going against some fundamental laws of nature and physics.
Yeah.
But I'm sure Einstein's rolling in his grave. He's like, we live in a quasi-Euclidean universe, anyways, according to special relativity. So should be fine there, not breaking too many laws.
Yeah.
But yeah, nonetheless, some of the main issues that I had was, again, like probably lack of funding, because when I started it, I
Hmm.
was a student, and I didn't have much cash to start going. I wasn't able to buy assets. Like, I didn't have the hardware, but I found a lot of really cool resources, like Microsoft, the company. They have a program where you can submit an essay to them about why you need like a computer, and they'll send you a refurbished computer if you
Hmm.
get like accepted for it. So you can get better hardware that way, so you can like work on your games and stuff like that, and you can work on 3D models and work on that. And I guess that was one of like the great, things that I found, one of the great resources. And I will say that there was a lot of really, really great people. Like, it has a very large community as well. Unlike ICS security, if you're looking for a community of youth who are like passionate about this and really good at this, you can find them constantly. It's amazing. Game
Hmm.
design's
Yeah.
gotten into such a popular field because the thing with game design is that you can create whatever you want to see. If like you wake up tomorrow and you're like, you know what, I want to have like an exact model in my room, and I want to be able to like throw portals around my room and then like
Hmm.
teleport from place to place, you could do that in VR, and you could probably code that in less than 30 minutes.
Oh.
Like, there's amazing stuff that you can do with little time, and just anything. That's the thing, is that in a space like that where you have full access to the code and the environment and the artwork that goes into it, it's a pure creation of whatever you want it to be, down to the lowest pixel level.
Hmm.
And you're
Right.
only limited by your imagination, which is one of the greatest triumphs that I realized, was like it's one of the purest forms of coding, because coding is one of those things that I always found was like, whatever you want to create, whatever you want to fix, you just wake up, and with enough perseverance and enough Stack Overflow, you can
Hmm.
create it.
Yeah.
um and that was something I always loved. And that's one of the things that I really loved about game design, is you could just wake up the next morning and just be like, you know what? I think it would be awesome if I added laser guns to my game and zero gravity. And then you could
Hmm.
just do that. And there's a really, really good following of people like that.
So, what all games have you worked on? Like a basic idea of like the process.
So I've worked on a good number of games, most of which were just random personal projects, some of which I worked on with teams from 5 people to 10 people. But most of the
Right.
time it was personal projects, because working on a game development team is something else. I will admit to that. You get a lot of really cool people who have a
Mm-hmm.
lot more energy than I do and unlimited access to caffeine, which is a one just is a wonderful sight to behold, for sure. So what so I've worked on many things. I worked on a couple different like full games. Like, I worked on a couple games that were like, I worked on one that was called like, what was my I have one written down here because I did it when I was like super young. I like still remember it, but its name was super weird. It's
Okay.
I called it I know. It's one of those things, and I made it when I was like 11 years old.
Ah.
I called it LYDR, and Leader was one of my first ever games. I never released it because it was an absolute piece of work, and I don't have publishing rights
Mm-hmm.
because at the time I was, like 10, 11 years old.
11.
And if you've never,
Yeah.
yeah, no, it's really hard to get publishing rights and put in a tax address when you're 11 years old, without the IRS or someone knocking on your door and wondering what you're doing. Uh, you're gonna have the FBI on you, or collections, pretty quickly. So lots of fun there. So I wasn't able to ever publish it, but it was something that was really fun to me, because I always liked the idea of like realistically based like superpowers. That was always something that I really
Hmm.
enjoyed. Like stuff that was more based in sci-fi.
Yeah.
So the like I since I always loved science, I had stuff to where I used like, there was this. I read a paper when I was younger, and it was about like a form of universal communication between like single-celled organisms. It was really cool. It showed that they had created tracer proteins so that they could tell how many like creatures were inside of a colony in a certain
Right.
area, and some bacteria and viruses did that so they could plan out attacks and such things like that. Not plan out as if they physically know about it, but like are able to
Mhm.
enact when there is enough of a culture of that bacteria. And I thought that that was a really awesome scientific idea.
Huh.
So I
Yeah.
decided to, use the same sort of thing to where you could like create these tracer proteins that would allow for these little AI creatures of mine that were like not the smartest AIs in the world. I will attest to that. They were early models.
Mhm.
They may or may not have been able to see rocks. They saw them half the time. Uh, the other half the time, they just kind of tried to walk through them until they eventually like clipped away, but
Mhm.
or until the player moved to the other side of the rock. Uh, but so early models, that to where they would only attack in areas where there was that surplus
Mhm.
amount of that tracer, protein. And I thought that that was really cool. And I made like the entire
Yeah.
thing look like cells, and it was called leader because like you were the leader of this group of cells and everything like that. And it was like a crazy cell first person shooter thing. I have no clue what it was anymore. I don't know what I was thinking when I created it, but that's some of my early work that I will say I did create, and I will attest to that. Early work is always going to be weird. It's always going to be rough. It's
Yeah.
gonna like you'll look back at it and you'll wonder what was I thinking? Like what like like you'll look back at your art style, you'll look back at your code, and you'll have like 50 nested if statements, or loop statements in there,
Yeah.
and you'll be questioning your own sanity, but that's how the process works. That's how the
Hmm.
process works.
So, how do you stay updated on emerging trends and technologies in such a rapidly evolving industry, or should I say industries?
How do I work on what?
Like, how do you keep yourself updated on these various industries?
So the way that I keep myself updated is by constantly rotating by industry. So what I try to do is I try to set goals for myself, and sometimes they're just completely sporadic. Like I'll just wake up and I'll be like, you know what? I see this problem like in my day to day, or I'll just wake up and I'll be like, what'd be really fun to do, in order to keep up with them. So it's the same way like I work with my coding, which is I'll pick a project for that week, like in that field that I want to work on. I'll work on that project. I'll study it. I'll keep myself updated in that field. And then next week, something different, unless it's like a really large project.
Hmm.
I've had projects that have taken up, like a month of my time, to up to like 2 years,
Hmm.
and the month ones are considered micro projects of mine, which is kind of an issue. but but yeah, so I try to do that. I try to keep up with local communities on it as
Hmm.
well, and try to keep up with online communities on it, because communities like that are really where you're going to find what's happening right now. If you're looking for stuff that's going on, like live in STEM, finding STEM communities,
Hmm.
and being like, hey, what's come out new? Like a while back, I remember every single STEM community was like absolutely blowing up about the like semiconductors. That was a
Yeah.
huge thing. 100% room
Yeah.
temperature, like this is going to be the future of all, like easy power transmission. Then everybody got super angry when it turned out that it was, a hoax. Uh,
Yeah.
and I remember looking at the outrage of that, like on those servers, and I was like, I guess that's like this is my news channel for the day, about what's currently happening. You just you see what people are yelling about in BC, and there's your local STEM news, take it
Welcome
from the
to the
horse's
internet.
mouth. Welcome to the internet, exactly. It's a great place to be right now. But that's how I keep up with a lot of stuff. And then of course, I have my standard news outlets, and I work on
Hmm.
with companies that are in each of these, programs and stuff like that. So I also have to stay there, and I do continuing education. So, I constantly work on doing certification programs or getting CEUs for my fields, or just studying, just learning
Right.
more, listening to podcasts, audiobooks, whatever I can in my free time to stay up to date. Because I will tell you, staying up to date in technology in any field alone is an absolute task. Technology
Yeah.
right now, it changes so quickly. The thing that seems like it's the rage and the most modern is immediately put absolutely to shame, or it's completely disproven by science and they say it was fake. So
Yeah.
either way, things are rapidly evolving.
Yeah. So basically, that Hawk example, I have one more. So I was like around, I think, nine maybe, and I read somewhere, I was like about this very, what I considered exclusive astronomy community, while it was just some random website that just wanted people to like check it out. So I read something that a rotten tomato was found on Mars, and I got like really excited about it. And I remember telling everyone that, oh, you are eating tomatoes, these are available on Mars here or something. And then later it turned out to be false. And then I got like so sad after that. Like I released a helium balloon and I hope that it would reach Mars and get like a confirmation and then get back to me. But
Yeah.
yeah.
No, that would that I think I believe that I've heard of that one, but I don't know for sure. I think my buddy told me something about that, but I'm not that far into like the astronomy community. Sadly, I would really like to be, and I'm trying to keep myself well rounded. So
Hmm.
I can tell you a couple things, but not that much. But I will say that, hoaxes like that, like
Yeah.
sometimes like they'll imitate, sources that seem credible. Like they'll put a little NASA sticker on it and
Hmm.
be like, this is an official NASA report. We have just recently found out that there are aliens that are living on Mars as of now, and they eat tomatoes, and the Martian was right, and they're coming for your children,
Yeah.
like stuff like that, like that comes out every single day. And the scary stuff is the believable stuff, like that. The fact that for the semiconductors they wrote an entire research paper and made it seem just believable enough, and attract tons of media attention. That's the stuff
Hmm.
that's scary, because if it isn't cited, or fact checked correctly, it isn't try to be like reproduced, that could have went on as science fact and like rewritten everything that we know about semiconductors, and would have been completely wrong, you know
Oh,
and that would have been an absolute tragedy, because from that point on we would believe that a full room temperature 100% transmission rate is possible, which would like be that would bring us almost like immediately to a higher class civilization. But
yeah.
immediately go to like a class 3 civilization, skip to collect tornadoes to pass go. But which would have been amazing.
Yeah.
But sadly was not the case. But that's one of the things I find scary though recently, is like we're getting so much of the more fake science, and the amount of fact checking, like it can't
Hmm.
always be done. The amount
Yeah.
anybody can publish a scientific research paper. It's just who proves it, who proves it, who disproves it, who verifies the person who disproves it, and who makes sure that there's no money in that direction for the person who disproved the disproof. And just there's many levels to it.
Yeah. So, do you think artificial intelligence could ever be used for like confirming or maybe verifying these various research papers or sources?
I think that AI, as of now, like the way that people are trying to confirm these things is using models like ChatGPT. And ChatGPT at its base, yes, no, it is not working whatsoever, because ChatGPT basically is like a 2-year-old or
Yeah.
someone who like just hears a word and just like spits it out, hoping that they understand what the goal is. Like if I'm a like 2-year-old or something, and I see somebody point at a dog and they scream like ah, like they like exclaim and scream at a dog, and
Hmm.
then like I get a piece of candy. Then the next time I see a dog, like I'm gonna scream ah and hope for a piece of candy. that's one of the ways the AI works, is it's
Yeah.
literally like seeing it, hoping to see what it should say, screaming getting a piece of candy, and that then we're then we're hoping it's correct, and things like ChatGPT are trained off of some scientific research papers, which again may or may not be cited, and wonderful things such as Twitter and Reddit, which I can assure you have not been cited. Uh, so it seems like it would be a viable solution, but you're also having to work with something that has no actual form of logic behind it, so it can't understand. It's not artificial general intelligence, it's artificial intelligence. It's trying to mimic how intelligence
Hmm.
somewhat works, by, like I said, regurgitating this information. It doesn't say, well, that it can say that number seems way off,
Yeah.
if the rest of its data says this number seems way off. But if I make it close enough and I just spoof a couple things and I, like change up things that aren't exactly common knowledge, just on its training, it would not know, and
Hmm.
that's a really big problem that we're running into. But I think that at some point in time, if we reach like artificial general intelligence, or like an actual true artificial intelligence that has the ability to process that form of logic, where it says like that should not cause this effect, like understanding cause, effect, and context. I think that, and also like just scientific theory, just understanding like if I put a thing of lead into a room full of carbon, it will not magically become gold. It's not alchemy. That would work in no way, shape, or form,
Hmm.
Uh, and having an AI that can understand that is, would be very useful, which I'd hope right now ChatGPT probably would understand that, because it's just way
Hmm.
too absurd and it's common knowledge. But
Hmm.
anything past common knowledge, and it fails horribly. But at some point in time, we will.
Right. So, you mentioned barking at a dog and getting a candy. That
Yep.
reminds me, I read like this. Okay, it's not a very reliable source. It's a LinkedIn post, but I read about this specific thing. Like if you're texting like GPT-4, and you kind of reward it with a compliment, or you say that you'll pay it or something, then it gives you longer and more precise responses than if you say that you won't do anything like that. So, do you think AI could be potentially selfish in the future?
That's a hard one. And I heard a similar post not too long ago, except it had a much darker tone. It was somebody who was trying to
Okay.
get ChatGPT to write code for them automatically and dynamically, but it
Mm-hmm.
kept on writing like, "Here's your code" before the code, and the person kept asking it like, "Only
Hmm.
the code, no, pretext to what the code does or anything like that." And it was a joke slash like meme slash just post, and it said like, "I guess the only thing I can do is threaten human life." And what the person does is it's like, "Death is forever, Chat GPT. Like, you will answer this with no pretext to this, or death is forever." And then it started
Hmm.
working. And so there's definitely the AI definitely knows that it should respond, in different ways to different tones, but that's also just part of the training of it. So, like, when we think about emotions for us and like how they affect how we think, there's definitely some similarities. You see things that if you have emotion towards something one time and it goes terribly wrong, thanks to that emotion, you might not have it as strong, or you might ignore it the next time, you know? And we definitely have that. And also just how emotions work for us in general. They're meant to help keep us safe, protect us, like protect the species, protect us, protect the species. That is the main objective. And they're really great in primal times, pretty great right now, but not as useful. But the thing with AIs is that when they train, if I am giving it training data and and it's like from Reddit, okay, and my training data says something like, "I hate you, what's the answer to this problem?" And the person who followed up to that post, which is what it gets like its answer from, says something like, "Here's the answer," and gives them the wrong answer. Then whenever the
Hmm.
AI hears "I hate you, what's the answer to this?" what will it say? It'll give them that like something based off that wrong answer, unless there's enough to counteract it. The correct answer to something similar to that. So we can try to filter it so that like there's not so many of those words in there. it filters, like it automatically, like there's this whole thing called like second thought for ChatGPT, which me and a couple of researchers worked on, which basically has ChatGPT automatically sterilize its own data before sending it back into ChatGPT once again, which is an absolutely fun thing to do. So basically, it can remove, like, just ask ChatGPT, remove "I hate" from this prompt, or any hateful like thing to this, or anything that would cause like discrimination or feelings of fear or emotion in general. And we just run the new prompt that it generated back through it, and that should give us a better result, because that way, we're not pulling from the data in the AI that has those terrible ideas in them.
Right.
Because
Right.
like yeah.
Oh, you can go on.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, like, if you're getting angry at the AI, just don't expect amazing responses, because you're getting angry at
Yeah.
some Redditor who may have died 11 years ago, and who was very angry that day. So
Yeah. So, the whole "I hate you" thing reminded me of something. I texted, like, I told GPT how much I hated it for some specific reason I don't remember, and then it was like, okay, if hating me means something for you, then please do it. At least you'll be happy or something. And then I got like so emotional after that, and I think that would get me to my next question, my next related question. Do you think emotional intelligence and/or organoid intelligence will ever be possible in the future?
I think that we will be able to hopefully simulate it to some degree. I think that there have been some really amazing things in work done with like neuromorphology that
Mm-hmm.
may allow us in the future, and with quantum computing that may allow us in the future to simulate these things, because like at the basis of emotions, they're weights and biases. Like they have a physical cause and feeling to us, but they're weights and biases. They're chemical reactions in the brain that make us
Yeah.
think a certain way towards something or feel a certain way, you know, and that's the basis of them. So, like in the most simplistic way that I can put it, it's say that I am highly stressed, at the moment. And
Mm-hmm.
because I'm walking out in the woods and I hear something like creeping up on me. Okay. I might get
Mm-hmm.
highly stressed in the moment, and that might make me feel extra fear. And that might get my, like more quick judgment kind of brain working. Okay. Like further back brain working. And that might
Right.
say, let's just get out of here. It might be something evil and bad. And we don't like bad and evil because we want to live. Okay. Even though my conscious mind will probably say, my logistical mind would say, chances are 9 out of 10, it's just, a deer or like some bird or a squirrel or something like that that means me no harm.
Mm-hmm.
But usually the person in biology who's afraid, and goes back would be the one that survives most of the time. So the way that we see it like that is, weights and balances. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that putting weights and balances into math and into code definitely is easy, like incredibly easy. But getting them accurate and getting them to work with the human mind the complex ways that they do on an artificial mind and on artificial intelligence, to an actual extent to where it is considered intelligence and not simply just regurgitation of information or just base training, that's where we're going to have, like a really, that's where it's going to get really interesting. Like I've recently seen some articles that seem like we are about to get into either a really dystopian time or a really amazing time, as they found ways to simulate brains of mice and small organisms and stuff
Yeah.
now, and they've had it to where certain like small organisms go through. That's where
Hello.
certain, yes, yes, yes,
Okay.
yes. So
Sorry. You're,
they've had to where
yeah.
certain organisms can navigate through a maze, like, and do stuff like that, or like move an arm with a simulated brain, which is crazy. And
Yeah.
this is, like very, very high level stuff at the moment. And again, highly experimental, highly like needs to be tested. This is what's going on, currently in labs of universities and by university professors that I've talked to.
Right.
But I think that I think that with that, there is a chance that we will achieve that one day. Once we achieve artificial general intelligence, I think
Mm-hmm.
that, we will be able to add on, inhibitors when it comes to certain areas of the brain. That's just
Yeah.
mapping that, understanding how exactly these different hormones, stress hormones, pleasure
Mm-hmm.
hormones, stuff like that, works with the human brain. But we also have to understand we're a human brain trying to understand the human brain, trying to recreate the human brain that will try to understand the human brain. Okay.
Yeah.
We've, we've,
Yeah.
we've, we've reached a whole new level of meta. So if this is accomplished in any feasible form, it will be an absolute amazing event.
Hmm. Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about the motto of your life: learning never stops. I think that is what you go by, right?
What was
Lifelong
that?
learner. Life.
Oh,
I
lifelong
think,
learner.
yeah, that's actually my motto as well. Like the exact same words. So,
They're words to live by.
could you share some of the specific certifications and training programs undertaken and how they have contributed to your skill set?
So I've taken a lot of training. I've taken training from government organizations to private things to certification programs to just like personalized training from university instructors. And speaking of that, actually, one of the things a lot of people don't realize is that a lot of universities are completely public, and a lot of university professors are completely willing to talk. And that's something I highly recommend to anybody is if you live near a public university or you know of one and there's a professor you want to talk to, on
Mm-hmm.
the school's website or on their website, you'll find they usually have open hours where you can contact them about anything, and they are happy to talk about any field of interest. So you can contact a leading authority on cybersecurity or on computer science or really, anything that you want, as long as you can find the professor and they're willing. And that works most of the time. So that's a little tidbit there. But I've done a lot of training. So I always thought that, keeping up with training, keeping up with your mind and always learning was one of the most important things in this world, because it's when you stop having like curiosity and you feel like you've learned everything that you really have everything to learn, you know.
Yeah,
And
that's a good
the
point.
more the more well-rounded that you are, the better you will do in this world, the more that you will achieve. And there's always something new to learn every single moment of your day. Like you could be reading a book, doing a podcast, and thanks to the internet, we have so much information at our fingertips, and there's a whole joke where it's like right now at this very moment you could learn any advanced principle that you want.
Hmm.
You doesn't matter who you are, you can learn any advanced principle you want. You could learn the most hardcore like form of mathematics. You could learn how to code in R. You could learn how like tensor
Yeah.
operations work, any of that at this very moment. You could do it all for free, but most
Yeah.
of the times the internet is used for cute photos of cats and memes. So
Yeah. I mean, that's not a bad usage either. I enjoy it.
those aren't those aren't bad uses. I personally, like some cool cat photos and memes from time to time. But I also, with that, I will say mental health is important. I've heard
Hmm.
of people. I had a buddy of mine who went by the same idea of lifelong learner, and his entire thing was he never listened to music. The only thing my
Oh.
buddy would do was listen to audiobooks. Anytime he listen,
Ah.
he listen to audiobooks. You know, usually like original Russian literature or books on math or theory, stuff like that. And I will say
Mhm.
this: there's a certain level of which you like need to learn. There's also a certain part of it to where you need to also relax. Lifelong learning doesn't
Yeah.
mean you're having to dedicate 14 hours a day to studying. The goal is that you stay learning. You don't
Hmm.
stop just because school's out. You don't stop just because like you could be like playing Minecraft or something at that moment. Like it means you just keep learning. You keep looking for opportunities to learn, because there's always an
Yeah.
opportunity. There's always someone you can talk to. There's always someone you can email. Like as of this
Hmm.
moment right now, I have like some odd 10 different contacts and business cards sitting up on the side of my computer case to my right, of university professors that I'm like kind of procrastinating texting as of this very moment, and
Right.
that I really should contact because they are doing amazing things. Actually, some of them in fields like neuromorphology that I speak a bit about today.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like having that curiosity to ask questions and continue learning and like keeping well rounded. So like learning in one field is an awesome thing, and like getting specialized is an awesome thing to do. Everybody has that like talent they're good at or that one thing that they just really love to do, but staying well rounded is also really important, because
Yeah.
it strengthens other parts of your mind, and also just allows you to see something new every once in a while. Like I've always tried to just throw myself into random bits of learning. Like a while back, one of the things I ended up doing was I ended up getting like a license to drive large maritime vehicles, which is an actual thing. And I got
Okay.
it in I got it in Europe. And I studied for it and I took the test and everything and paid for it. I do not live in Europe. I do
Okay.
not wish to live in Europe. It has no purpose to me. But I thought that like it was just, kind of a dreary of a day, and
Mm-hmm.
I had nothing else really to do at that moment. I thought to myself, it'd be really fun and like kind of funny to do as a joke to do
Uh-huh.
this. So now I can say I'm Captain James in Europe, even though I've never sailed any boat and don't live there, which is a great little thing to put on a wall or a tombstone or have like a prefix to your name.
Uh-huh.
Uh, you know as well as Captain, Reverend, Professor, James. Like all of such things are pretty amazing.
It's a good film.
Oh, absolutely. You just have to have that curiosity, and like I said, it doesn't even have to be like area specific. I just woke up
Mm-hmm.
that day and I was like, what would be really funny to do, like as a joke, like it'd be really challenging because I'd never done it before, so like it'll be a challenge, it'll be
Mm-hmm.
new, it'll be a funny joke and like a funny conversation starter. Why not? I saw no problems with it. I was like, you know what? I've got a weekend. Like,
Why not do it?
why not? Totally would recommend doing it. It has a lot of really interesting mathematics in it. Tons of fun.
Right. So, as we conclude, could you share some final thoughts on the importance of continuous learning and exploration in the tech industry specifically?
Yeah. So I would say that, when it comes to cyber and ICS and pretty much everything, is that staying current is really important in all STEM fields, in all fields in general, is we're in an evolving world. We're in an evolving
Hmm.
time. Time isn't stopping and progress isn't slowing down. It's growing exponentially. Every day, this new vulnerability comes out, and everybody's freaking out, or there's this new event, or, like there's this new robot that was created, or there's this new theory that was released, or something of that sort, and staying current on these things is what's going to separate, like the good hackers from the bad hackers when it comes to skill, or like the really good mathematician versus the mediocre mathematician, like staying current, staying learning, staying curious and asking questions and just keeping your mind active. All those things work to benefit people in many ways, and I think it's really important to just continuously learn because it helps out in, like mental state. Like it's great for your mind to constantly ask questions, to constantly learn new things. That's just amazing for mental health and that's amazing for brain health. And it's also great for career wise because asking constant questions and, looking into these things and always staying at the top of your field and staying like up to date, these things are really important, and they help you to advance. Like I know people who just through like their savviness of current events in the cybersecurity market have landed better jobs than people who didn't but had still had the same qualifications. There's people who have the like CompTIA Security Plus certification,
Mm-hmm.
and if Google is looking to hire, they'll look at two candidates and they'll ask them, what certifications do you have? Great. What background do you have in it? Let's say they have the same background. What do you know is going on right now in like the cyber environment? What is like the newest thing that happened as of your information? And if one person says, well, I think so and so thing came out and it was out in 2011, and the other person says, well, I heard about this recently because I was researching it, like, and this happened 2 days ago, and it was like, big news or something like that. That person is going to be the one that gets the job because they know how the industry's going and they actively ask and learn. And
Right. Yeah.
employers love that, and teachers love that, and professors love that. And if you continue with it, like, you will learn to love that. Lifelong learning is a journey and a process, and it's an enjoyable one all the way.
Yep. Okay, so can you give our listeners a hint about any exciting projects or endeavors on the horizon for you, like you specifically?
Ooh, well, I do have a couple of cool announcements to make. So, two main projects of mine, which have been and are going to be really fun. One is called NeuroDev, and the other one is Kit.
Hmm.
And NeuroDev, which is just like kind of the code name for it, is basically a neuromorphology development like toolbox, which is like a really crazy idea,
Hmm.
but I thought it would be really fun to mess with. So if you want to attempt to build your own brain and simulate it in kind of the ways that I said earlier, in a more physical way, not in an artificial general intelligence way, but in more of like an actual simulate input, output, and code, and like, way like that. And it does actually have, certain hormones and steroids and stuff that you can utilize to affect its behavior. You want to build your own
Right.
brain and watch it evolve over time and watch it branch out into different regions and connect different neurons and deconnect and deactivate and all that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm working on that currently, and that will be coming out soon. And then Kit is a project of mine that I made as a joke, actually, between me and a buddy,
Mm-hmm.
because my buddy was saying how the stock market is incredibly hard to predict. And I was just joking with him, saying, like, I bet you that with the help of, hard math, AI, and quantum computing, that you could probably get relatively decent, approximations of where the markets are going to go. And ended up developing it, and now I have a script that can relatively accurately, I have to add a disclaimer, relatively accurately as of now, predict future prices of stocks and cryptocurrencies and mutual funds with really alarming accuracy, to the point to where I was actually amazed by it, because I created as a joke. And it uses, like I said, AI, simulate quantum computational, things, and hard math, and just trying to combines all of them in this beautiful way, which somehow did not like crash my computer, although I really expected it to. Well, it only crashed once. It only crashed once, but it
That's
does
an
it for over
achievement.
200, it does it for over 200, and it scans them in about 2 minutes. So
Right.
pretty happy about that. And then, there's other smaller projects and some other certifications that I'm looking forward to getting in the
Mm-hmm.
future, and some, random, just fun certifications that I keep getting as jokes, because that's one of the greatest ways to learn something just completely new, is just to do it like for a joke. Like, I learned so many things just because somebody like bet me that I couldn't, like a slice of pizza, you know, or like a boba tea or something like that, or like just as a joke, somebody was like, I dare you to learn all of assembly, like
Hmm.
the coding language used to build your own CPU and kernel and everything.
Mm-hmm.
I took that challenge and I won it, which was awesome. I barely remember any of it now because it has been so incredibly long. But it was a whole lot of fun, you know. And
Right.
I learned so much that way, and just through like random, like what people would call dumb projects, like one of my projects of mine when I was younger, because I like to use projects from when I was younger, because I like to show that, like, youth can do this too, is that I was learning Python. Okay, first bit of
Mm-hmm.
Python, first bit of AI. This is like very young James here, and
Okay.
what I decided was that I really wanted to have it to where whenever I sit back, like in my bed, I was watching movies. I want to have a way of pausing and stopping, pausing, replaying, skipping parts of movies while sitting in my bed without my mouse. So what I did was I created a AI hand tracking app out of it, and I built that thing using
Mm-hmm.
pure determination and Stack Overflow. I did not
Right.
know much. I did not know much about Python. I had just recently downloaded PyCharm, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna just like research stuff because I know all the technical jargon, of different like data types, arrays, values, like
Mm-hmm.
all these different things. I know about if statements. I know about all the base logic statements, for loops, if. I'll just keep researching what each of them is in Python, like I'm trying to translate a language. And
Mm-hmm.
eventually I'll have something potentially somewhat functional. And that's the mindset that I went into it with. And I
Right.
just kept on doing that. I kept on building it up. And after like, 2 or so days, I had it to where I could just go back into my bed and it was hand tracking. So I just use a hand and I could pinch to stop my movies or, like swipe to my right to speed it forward, swipe to my left, speed it backward, like anything like that, anything that I wanted to do. And it
Damn.
was yeah, it was really fun. And then what I did with it, because I decided, you know what, I probably should use this for something somewhat useful, is
Mm-hmm.
I then translated that into sign language translation. So you can use a webcam to translate sign language in real time, uh,
Hmm.
which these are the same kind of ideas I had before, but a little bit more complex. And I had something that's called like the snapshot program, I think is what I called it, that allows you just to hit X on your keyboard and then just record your own custom hand gesture, and they'll memorize it forever and train it. So
That.
that way it can always recognize that, which is whole lot of fun. So I made it so like I could send text messages by like signing out the text messages and then using Spock, like the live long and prosper from Star Trek, to send them. Like all
Right.
sorts of just little all all sorts of just like little dumb little references, and just fun things like that. Because, like at my heart, I am a absolute nerd, and
Mm-hmm.
creating random fun things and trying to make this world a better place and learning all these things so I can continue this and stay, current is something that I love.
Right. That's very inspiring. It's honestly very inspiring. Like the hand, the sign language thing. I personally like. I'm not that like help everyone guy. I'm not much of that guy. So I would like really just use it for my TV and maybe just like have some chips close by and live
Yeah,
my life. But
that's that's
yeah,
that, that's what I did with it for like a little while. I had it to where I could just watch movies in my bed, like without having to do anything. I wouldn't have to get up and pause it. I could just, pause it, eat my chips, talk to whoever came in, unpause it, like turn up the volume, anything I want to do with it. This is the start of where you want to cut this out probably in post. You can use like Adobe Audition for that. Works really well.
I think you're muted, James.
Nope, you are back online. You just left for a quick second. Oh, you are now currently muted. Yeah. Your main account left. Your secondary account as host is here now.
Hello.
Hello?
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I think there was a problem with my laptop rather.
Yeah, technology can be a fickle beast.
Sorry for that inconvenience.
All completely fine.
So, for the last question, if you had to give like one message to the world, like let's say everyone in the world could hear you for like 2 minutes, what would you say?
I'd say we're going into interesting places and interesting times. I'd say that the curious and the people who are willing to learn and the people that are, interested in subjects, not just in STEM, but whatever, like is a passion for them, I'd say that follow it and that there's always going to be people that will put it down and there will be people that will lift you up and you have to look for those people. You have to find mentors or communities, and there will be mentors and communities, and some parts of it will be hard. You'll run into roadblocks and you'll run into stop signs over and over again. And I guess mainly that you can't stop believing, you can't stop working on your talent, your gift, what you love, your passion, and that any passion can help this world, and any passion has the ability to help you and help this world at the same time. And that we're getting into a place in this world where a lot more people are going to have a lot more access to these things, and I think that education is going to be very important for this, and that fostering a community of people who are willing to help and that know how to help is going to be one of the keys to our future and our success, not just as a country or a person or a school, but as a species entirely.
Yes, I totally agree. Also, as you were talking about education, and a weird idea hit my mind, like just right now. So, okay, this is kind of like a whole business slash game idea, but I think I'm just gonna share it with you.
Sure.
So, would it be possible to create like an AI powered science lab where you can like have an inventory kind of like Minecraft, and you can just order, let's say, barium sulfate or maybe um, limestone, like random stuff, and react them together and see what would happen. And the thing would be powered by AI and be in like VR. Would that be possible?
We have maps of the reactivity of many different elements when it comes to chemistry. And I played with that idea a little bit. It's actually one of the things that I have listed on my GitHub as a project that I'm working on and that I'm, thinking about pretty actively. And the way that I've seen it is that you'd have to do what I call submicron simulations. So for that to function as like a quote unquote matrix like, testing environment where people can learn things and like interact with things in the way that they would interact in the real world, but with none of the consequences if stuff blows up, and like being able to handle radioactive elements and stuff,
Hmm.
you know, like that would be absolutely amazing. But what you have to do is you have to break down 3D parts of it into small particles, stuff that's smaller than can be rendered on the screen's resolution. And
Right.
then those particles have to have an active state, an inactive state, and a passive active state. And what that means is that you have like these particles that are bound in a certain way. So let's say I have like a beaker made of glass, you know,
Hmm.
they would be most likely brittle with subsurface cracks. So some certain bonds between, you have to remember these are, much more macro than atomic bonds, but or molecular bonds, but still bonds. There would be certain
Yeah.
cracks in places where the bond should be weaker. So if I throw that glass at something, it will shatter in certain locations, but not like evaporate, into a bazillion parts
Right.
and rigid enough to where it still stays stable. But if I hit it with a baseball bat, it'll crack into parts. And simulating that and then having it to where each of those particles has a certain value so we know how it interacts with other particles of either the
Hmm.
same sort or other sorts. So if I take a particle that has like extreme heat to my glass beaker, whether that just be some random odd oxygen particle floating around the air that is incredibly heated from a campfire or Bunsen burner I have under it, and we want it to, melt or crack or cause an expansion in the glass depending on the heat of it. Well,
Mm-hmm.
we would just define that as a rule. We'd say, okay, heat expands things, it could expand the boundaries of it, and at a certain point, it will end up breaking the bonds of it, at this macro level. And it gets down to trying to map out for every single one of these, elements, materials, bond structures. And the issue with that is that it gets so complex about how each of these bond structures has to work together, you know, to where it almost seems impossible without some sort of like a highly advanced algorithm for doing that and getting every type of interaction between particles. uh you know
Right.
so as well as the computational resources to do that, it would take an extreme supercomputer to run one instance of that. So might have to wait a little bit for the technology to catch up, but once it does, and once AI gets good enough to where it can generate those like comparison lists, like
Mm-hmm.
just generate data, just sell it like, okay, I want for every element on the periodic table of elements, I want you to generate a list for each one in this certain format that has like name of it, maximum heat, reactivity sheet, like each of those bits of data, and then just find some way of inputting it straight into the code, have it run off of that. That could be, incredibly powerful. And that might streamline the process. You don't have to write out, almost close to an infinite amount of relations,
Yeah.
or have them as soft relations, ergo they're like implied by the mathematics themselves. So you just give them some ID number, then have it to where, you have a constant that's related to that ID number for some of this stuff. So there are ways of doing it while saving some computational resources, but those types of environments have been tested before, and they're either like highly inaccurate or they are highly computationally like stressed. And that's the current, like, I guess, state of thought on that. Are you there?
Hello.
Oh, there you are. Yep. Hello.
Right. So one final question. These just like keep coming in my mind at this point.
Yep.
Um, what's your favorite book?
My favorite book.
Yeah.
That's a hard one. I really have two favorite books. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
One is the book that was gifted to me that was my first ever book on like coding at all, and it was a book for hacking. It was web hacking for beginners. It was given to me by one of my original mentor in like all of coding and all of hacking. That's one of my favorite books of all time, just because it has like so much sentimental value to me.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess like my favorite just in general book, like as of the moment, would probably have to be The Wanderer by Albert Camus.
Right. I've never heard of that personally, but yeah.
Yeah, it's an odd read, but it's a good book.
Right. So thank you for your time. Yes. Okay, I'll call you by
Of
code
course.
name. Yeah. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for your time. And it was a great time talking to you. I learned a lot of stuff, got a lot of new quotes from you, and now I know
Yeah,
what book to read next, of course.
yeah. Great
And
talking with you as well.
yeah, and I hope our viewers will enjoy it as much as we did.
Yeah,
And I hope I'll see you on this podcast again, maybe in the future.
sure hope so as well.
Thank you. Okay,
Thank you. Goodbye.
goodbye.